Welcome to the Lucy Vaughn channel. Join us as we take a magical adventure through transformational stories where imagination meets reality and unique paths reveal visions beyond the ordinary. Today we are diving into real-life tales of guests who have embraced controversy, creativity, and their own spirituality to rise above challenges. These are the stories that stir curiosity, ignite imagination, and remind us of the power we all hold. So get ready to explore the unknown and awaken the magic within. This is more than a show, it's a journey into wonder and possibility. Let's unlock some magic. Today we are diving into the revolution of industrial rock music and Los Angeles Satanic Underground. Joining us today is singer, producer, and originator of the industrial rock band, the God Bombs. Justin is from New York City, where he originally formed the God Bombs. The debut album, VoidHead, featured Daisy Berkowitz. Is that how you say it?
Berkowitz.
Co-founding guitarist of Marilyn Manson. The band has toured with Ministry, Chelsea Wolfe, Green Jello, just to name a few. The band has performed at, I think, and you're still performing right now at the Viper Room, right?
Yeah, we just did the Viper Room.
Okay, cool. As well as past performances at Gathering of the Juggalos, Wasteland Weekend, and Dark Side of the Con, and many more places. Singer and producer Justin Sybil joins us today to share on everything from growing up on the East Coast as a punk rocker in a rich neighborhood, his journey through addiction to his music career, and the cult satanic scene in LA, and some of his spiritual practices to his relationships with his higher power. I'm excited to have you on the show, Justin. You have an amazing story of what is possible in a life of sobriety with the added twist of rock and roll and Satanism, the good old American dream. So let's start in the beginning, your life in the East Coast.
Well, I was born in New York City and grew up in New Jersey and then moved to Connecticut when I was 11 when my parents split up. And I moved to Stamford, Connecticut, which is in Fairfield County, the richest county in the United States, but we were not rich. We were middle class. And so there was definitely a sense of like, everyone's playing lacrosse and tennis and everyone's super preppy. And I guess I never felt like I fit in fully with that. And I think that kind of influenced my musical style to be more punk, or, anything that would be sort of against the grain. I got into like industrial music early on, and skinny. I actually had a housekeeper that was Hungarian, and she gave me all these CDs of like Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, Ministry, Nitzer Ebb, all these underground bands that normally you wouldn't be exposed to at that age. So I started with like underground industrial music from the very beginning. And then I went to college up in Syracuse, New York. And that's when I started doing music myself. And it was more like performance art. And, we had some wild shock rock type theatrical shows, just like we do now. And, eventually I graduated there and started living in New York City and playing in bands in New York City. That was always my dream, was to make it out in New York. I didn't really know anything about the West Coast at that time.
Mm-hmm. And I recall you were saying that you graduated college for writing?
Television, radio, and film, which I was in the school of journalism. My goal was to be a journalist originally. I didn't really have a goal. I was just high all the time, and I hated everything. And I was just overwhelmed as a teenager. And I felt like I was pushed into going the college route. So I kind of gravitated towards journalism, I guess, because I thought I'm good at writing and I was really good as a writer. So, but I realized quickly that journalism is really like everyone has an agenda. So whatever media you're working for, you're kind of pushing their agenda. You're not necessarily telling the facts. You're telling a version of the facts that fits that, whatever that publication is, or whatever that network, whatever their agenda is. And I realized quickly that I wasn't really interested in journalism, but I was in a video editing class in school. And meanwhile, I had been playing locally in bars and stuff with my band. And we shot a music video, and I edited it in the editing lab that we had from being in that class. And so that was kind of where I was like, okay, I like video editing. That's going to be what I gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm. And do you edit your own videos?
Mostly, yeah. I mean, lately, the more recent stuff has been in collaboration with a filmmaker named Jason Kaplan here in LA. And he is kind of more and more doing a lot of the editing. I've been a lot busier with the other side of the industry, like the marketing and the networking and going out here in LA, booking shows, working with our manager to secure different opportunities and stuff. But normally, like most of the music videos online, I've edited those. Yeah.
They're really good.
Thank you.
I've seen your last one, The Lord of the Flies, which just came out. That one was really good. Hi, Kitty.
Yeah.
He said, I want to be a superstar.
His name is Sage. Say hi.
Hi, Sage. Oh, so cute. I had a cat like that before.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have a question. I just did, the last video was with Winter Armada. She did a whole video on Beelzebub. So is Lord of the Flies inspired by Beelzebub?
Yeah, I would say it's inspired by the novel Lord of the Flies, in which there's a talking pig head, and that pig head is meant to represent Beelzebub, as you say. And I think it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek about how our society doesn't really value like virtue. It values our society is more driven on accomplishments and achievements and kind of clawing your way to the top at all costs. So it's saying like, betraying all the rest to become the Lord of the Flies. Like, it's kind of like you're becoming the biggest, baddest wolf of the bunch.
Cool. Okay. So what brought you out to California?
Well, I came out here on tour originally. We were touring. It was our first tour with William Control. And I just fell in love with it right away. I mean, we played out here in Hollywood, a club called Bar Sinister, and the goth scene was huge. And people just out here seemed to be more expressive, like colorful and loud, and the way they dressed and the way they acted. And it seemed like a place where fantasy can become reality. Whereas New York was all about like this kind of gritty, harsh realness, where it's like, oh no, you're not going to make it. You're nothing. You got to prove yourself. And I did prove myself in New York. And then LA seemed like the land of fantasy and smoke and mirrors, and kind of appealed to me from like a theatrical standpoint. Like you can reinvent yourself, or you can do something new. And I was interested in also in like the fact that the West Coast has this kind of like alternative spirituality scene here, whether it's like Scientology or Satanism or different occult practices, different cults that exist out here. It seems like a place where people come to kind of like tell their own story or reinvent the wheel. So I was drawn to the alternative spirituality of Los Angeles and of the West Coast. And of course, the weather, the history of it, just everything appealed to me. So pretty much as soon as I came out here on tour, I set about to try to, put the wheels in motion for me to eventually move here.
So jumping back to like when you were in New York, like when did your partying and stuff start? When did you start getting involved in like drugs and stuff?
I mean, I was involved with drugs as a teenager, 17, even, 16, 17. We started drinking beers behind the school, smoking cigarettes and smoking weed, and classic, typical teenage story. My best friend, Andrew, growing up, he got me into all that stuff, and he was kind of my idol, my guru.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that got me into music, and he had a guitar, and he had a garage, and his parents would like let us jam in there, and then they'd come in and be like, "This is awful, turn it down." But that's how I started doing rock music, and he kind of taught me the ropes in so many areas, whether it was drinking and drugs or music, home recording. We were recording in Pro Tools, which was like a big deal back then. It's not like it is now, where every kid has GarageBand and everyone's a producer. Back then, it was kind of like a big thing if you can produce your own music. So we started doing our own music, and he inspired me in so many ways, but unfortunately also in drugs. And he introduced me to cocaine also. And I remember it was the first time we did cocaine. He was in NYU at that point, and I visited him in New York City. And we did a bunch of blow, and man, we were just on top of the world. And we went to see Nine Inch Nails at Madison Square Garden, and it just blew our fucking minds. I'll never forget that. But the story got darker, unfortunately, as time went on. I had a lot of trauma and things that were unaddressed from growing up, and certain experiences I had on drugs that kind of started affecting me, and also the fact that I never felt like I fit in Connecticut, and I was kind of the black sheep, and people were super judgmental about like, appearance and sexuality, and, just anything that wasn't the mainstream, like heteronormative, preppy look was kind of like demonized. So I think I harbored a lot of grudges against people and things, and I didn't know that I had those things. And it kind of came out more and more with drinking, and I started lashing out and, lashing out against other people and getting into legal repercussions for it, I guess. That guy, Andrew, that I mentioned, he was kind of the guy that would fight against the bullies when we were growing up. He was like my hero, and I think over time, I started to just self-destruct because I was like so angry because of all the things that happened, all the things I went through, and the fact that I just felt like society was so fake. And I was trying to find myself, I guess, and it took a while for me to really find my people. It really wasn't until I was like here in LA or I guess back in New York too, that I found like my tribe, I guess you could say. And so, just drinking and drugs was an escape from a lot of emotions. So yeah, I mean, I got into drugs because it was a way to escape. And, my reality was, it's like in the album Antichrist Superstar by Marilyn Manson, he talks about being the worm. I was the worm. I was trying to find myself. I was an awkward teenager trying to become the Justin symbol that I am now. And
I recall too that you were being raised in a single parent home.
Yeah, my mom was raising me alone, and I would sometimes bounce around to my dad's place, and he kind of had like a series of different partners, one after the other. And I think I felt like I just want to stay with, I wanted to build a friend group. Every teenager just wants to fit in somewhere. And I was trying to build a group of friends back in Connecticut, but then kept having to go see my dad in New Jersey. And it was just, kind of like living in two different places at once and not really vibing with that. And just wanting to try to, find myself or whatever. And
yeah, when I was younger and I was going to rehabs at my young age, I started like noticing there was that pattern of like other people I was in there with, like coming from like a one parent home or their parents just got divorced. And I think when you're young, that stuff has a big effect on you, especially when you have that stability and what you've known as security kind of just wiped away from you.
Yeah, like people nowadays, it's just considered so normal, I guess, that it's kind of wiped under the rug. But divorce is traumatic for sure. And I didn't really, I think I wanted to talk about it with my mom and talk about what happened, but instead she's like, "We're gonna send you to therapy." Like anytime there was like a negative emotion, there was no space for that emotion to be expressed in the home. It was just like, we got to send you away to talk to someone else. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to you. She was never there. She was always on a business trips, working to build a better future for me. And I felt like I just wanted her to be more present. And I was also dabbling with my sexuality, my spirituality. I was dabbling in, I was online in chat rooms and stuff, doing cyber sex.
The dial-up, when it was all dial-up.
Oh yeah, cyber sex and pretending to be someone else, to have sex with someone who's pretending to be someone else, and studying or learning about Satanism and the occult, and I was just drawn to anything that wasn't this boring suburban white picket fence kind of like existence where everyone's judging everyone because you're not rich enough. That's what Connecticut was like. It was like, oh, you're not rich enough, or you're not wearing the polo shirt, and you're not good enough at lacrosse, or you're not, it was just never, it was this feeling of like never being enough. So then gravitating towards drugs and alcohol because it was a rebellion and it was a way to escape. And music was also a way to escape. And those two things just went so hand in hand. And it was just that was my whole upbringing, was just trying to find something that made me feel whole, I guess.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Who were your idols when you were growing up?
Well, I mentioned Marilyn Manson. I mean, that was a huge idol. Just the idea of the Antichrist Superstar album was a tremendous influence on me, because it was the story of someone that was weak and bullied and was the worm, and then sort of metamorphosized into this Antichrist superstar, famous rock star. And I guess I idolized that and thought like that was something worth trying to go after, like, becoming larger than life so that you can transcend your shitty reality and you can like become kind of your own god, and influencing others in the process. So definitely Marilyn Manson and 9 Inch Nails, also Trent Reznor. The production was so incredible, and the themes of the songs were edgy and dark and twisted, and I love the song Closer. I remember hearing that on the radio and just thinking, this is like nothing else. Yeah, like it was like nothing else that was on the radio, because he was talking about like sex, like using sex to escape himself and like getting closer, using sex as like a spiritual thing almost, but in like a dark, seedy way, which I didn't even know I was doing that at the time, but I was totally doing that. I was like hooking up with all kinds of people after school, and just I was a total slut, and I was using sex to escape, just like drugs, basically, like having sex with all.
I can relate to and understand that, because I think in my 20s, like I went through that phase where I went through like some really traumatic, crazy stuff, and I hit a big loss in life, and it hit me really hard, and like my whole world was like wiped over under my feet, and I just became very promiscuous, and it was like my way of dealing with the pain and numbing it out, and it worked till it didn't work no more.
Yeah, exactly. And in my case, like I said, I was dabbling in my sexuality and trying to find myself. And I was going through I was also influenced by David Bowie. And I was in this thing where I was like, being straight is boring, and being preppy is boring, and being normal is boring. So anything that's weird and, homosexual behavior seemed edgy and seemed almost illegal in Stamford, Connecticut, because it was so conservative there. So I was like, dabbling with different sexuality and stuff just to try to kind of find like an escape. And, that caused a lot of scandals in my school and stuff, because everyone, again, was so straight laced. And I kind of like, I'm like, I had this Bowie thing where I was like, I don't know if I'm gay, but I want to be gay because it's gonna piss you off,
Yeah.
So I was doing all that stuff and using people for sex because I was trying to get high, and I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that is what I was doing. And there's a lot of trauma that comes with that. There's sexual assaults that I experienced because I was on drugs, hooking up with people I didn't know, putting myself in risky situations, and it kind of seemed like thrilling at the time. But then, it also added to my trauma. And then like I started becoming violent and angry when I would drink because I had this trauma and I didn't even know I had that.
Hmm. Hmm. It sounds like the perfect dichotomy of addict brain.
Yeah.
Whatever you can get that adrenaline rush out of, right?
Yeah. It's like, I want to get high off of people, places, things, anything, to escape. And, I remember like doing acid, and I thought I was like the reincarnation of Jesus. And I was like going to go out into the street and tell everyone this is my prophecy. But my prophecy was just that I was going to fuck my roommate. And it's like, but it seemed profound at that time to me. But just like being so lost with sex addiction and drug and alcohol addiction. And it was a lot of fun though. Like, I'm not going to say it wasn't fun, but I always dreamed of like touring and doing bigger things with my music. And I was just so chaotic and unstable.
Yeah.
That unfortunately, with that lifestyle, I wasn't able to get things really off the ground the way I would later when I got sober.
Yeah. Cause I feel like you exerting a lot of different energy just sporadically all over the place instead of like finally tuning that energy into like accomplishing what you really could.
Yeah, like we formed this band, and it was almost like a cult. And we were self-harming, we were doing acid, we smoked meth, and we wrote all these songs, and we would like perform live in New York City, and then we'd like smash all of our instruments. I remember like our first show, I smashed my bass guitar. The keyboardist had like dead frozen mice that you would feed to a snake. He put them on dental floss, and then he sewed his mouth shut, and his mouth was just bleeding. And then he had these frozen mice hanging from his sewn mouth on these dental strings. And
that's wild.
And we were high on meth, and then the singer went and like beat the shit out of somebody or got into some kind of a fight outside the club, and there was blood on the ground, and it was awesome, but it was like so chaotic that people were like, we don't fuck with you because you're too crazy, you're too much. Like,
it's wild.
The cops would like come to we all lived together in this one apartment, and the walls had like blood on. I remember like there was like voodoo symbols and blood, and there was just like shit everywhere. Like it was just trashed, and we would like throw these parties and deliberately try to be shocking. We threw a party on 9/11, and we called it like the 9/11 party or whatever. We had a cake that was shaped like the Twin Towers, and then little plastic airplanes flying into the cake, and it was served by a girl who had a burqa on, like a terrorist.
Oh, no way. That sounds awesome.
It was awesome. And then, but all these people came because we advertised it online, and then we had these giant Santa Clauses, and we like covered them in kerosene and lighter fluid, and lit them on fire, and they started melting, and everyone started screaming and running. And then like the whole neighborhood, all the people in the neighborhood were like opening their windows because it's Brooklyn, so there's buildings all around. And we were living in the ghetto in Bushwick. This wasn't like some glamorous trust fund shit.
Yeah.
And then they were like, shut the fuck up, like fuck you. And they were throwing bottles down at us, and we just thought like, this is amazing, And then the cops are banging on the door, and then the cops were scared of us at some point because I opened the door and I had slashed my chest open with a broken mirror, and I was bleeding, gushing blood, and they just looked at me, and they were like, and they just walked away.
Really?
Oh yeah, and so we were kind of like feared, but it was like a cult, like I said. But the dark side of that was there was a lot of violence between myself and the leader of that group. We were clashing a lot because I was very talented and he wanted me to kind of like serve him. And I kind of had my own thing. Like, I'm like, I know I'm going to be a star. So, we were butting heads a lot, and we would fight physically, like, cause we'd be on meth. And then I would go into the kitchen in the middle of the night, and he'd be standing there with like a ski mask on and like a skull on it. And then he would just punch me in the face. And then we would just start fighting in the middle of the night. And then I would try to go to work the next day, and I'd have like all these bruises and shit.
Wow.
And I had like the bloody thing on my chest. I remember I was in my office because I was still video editing this whole time. Because that's, I had this degree for video editing and I was working. And I remember going in the office and like peeling my chest open and being like, you can see the scar still. But I would, it's this side. But, oh wait, no. I really mirrored vision. But I peeled the, my shirt off.
Crazy.
Yeah, I peeled the shirt off my chest, and I'm like, why is it like this? My chest hurt so much, and it was like it was stuck to the dried blood, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even remember that I had like slashed open my chest the night before, and so it just started getting crazier and crazier, and then the job, like I was the only one in this group that had a real job. Everyone else was doing like stupid, shitty jobs because they didn't have a degree in college, and they were like, they weren't able to hold down like a really good job like how I was. So I got fired because I was just showing up fucking hungover all the time. And then that was like the one thing keeping me kind of somewhat sane, I guess. And then, there was a huge falling out within the band. And basically I had to leave because it was so chaotic, and I felt like I was going to die if I continued. So I left that group, and
this was still in New York, right?
Oh yeah, this was in New York. I had to kick everyone out of my house because they were all living there, and then I moved out, and then they just stayed there. They squatted there, and I took all the furniture away, and then they still stayed there, and then I got an eviction on my record. And, it's just a lot of consequences and stupid, like, just getting arrested a lot. And I don't do well with cops. I don't like cops. I like to tell them how much I hate them, which when you're wasted and you're telling cops to go fuck themselves, it's
not a good combo.
It's not a good combo unless you're like the hottest girl ever, which I'm not. So, it just didn't go well. And, there was just so many arrests and so much drama, and my poor parents I think they realized a little too late that they were kind of so hands off, and they never understood me or tried to really nurture my creative side as much as I probably needed. They just wanted me to be a square kind of, and that just wasn't going to happen. And, so,
I mean, I grew up liking Marilyn Manson and like the music you talked about as well. And I've always been very creative, but sometimes like when you're into that kind of stuff, it kind of freaks people out a little more, or like when you're going towards a different type of creativity versus like more lighter.
That's what it was. They were disturbed by my interests and my the different formats that I was going in creatively. And I remember my uncle, like, he was like, I want to have dinner with you and talk about something. And I'm like, okay. So I went there, and he was like, we're following you on Instagram, him and his husband. And he's like, we're following you on Instagram, and we saw a picture of your chest, and it was all bloody, and it said the word, because this thing on my chest that says love, that was another carving that I had done. And then I later got it tattooed with the red. But it was originally a carving, and they were like, you're influencing people to hurt themselves, and what you're doing is wrong. And I was like, well, it's a self-expression, and they're like, it's wrong and it's bad, and it's you need to get mental help.
Yeah.
And, it seemed more like they were concerned about me because they didn't want me to make them look bad. Like, they're like, take this down offline. And my whole family, it was always like, go get help. Like, it wasn't like, let's talk about what's going on, or let's work things out. Like they never kind of were like, what's going on with you? It was like, you should go talk to someone. So it wasn't hands-on really. I think
like they were just trying to wipe their hands clean of the situation and get you somewhere else.
Get me somewhere else, a professional who could handle it. And yeah, I think like I was just different, you know, like I was like I said, David Bowie, Black Sheep, whatever. I always had that energy about me, and they just didn't know how to handle me at all.
I can very relate and understand, very relate to that. So like, what was your family? Were they religious? What was going on there?
My parents, my dad is Jewish, but they really just celebrated like the typical holidays like Hanukkah, Passover, and sometimes I would go there for that. But it was just more like the ceremony of it. It wasn't like they actually talked about the religion itself. They weren't really very spiritual. And then on my mom's side, they were, you know, I guess Christian, but again, they only really just celebrated the major holidays, and there was no sense of, we never talked about God or anything like that growing up in my house. I mean, it was just not, you know, they were just typical like rural New Yorkers. Like they didn't really have any kind of religious affiliation other than like token holidays and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's understandable. So like David Bowie and these artists, like obviously like they're very involved in the occult and magic and all that stuff. So were you influenced by them like towards the occult, or how did that happen?
I think it all.
You consider yourself a Satanist, right?
I do.
You identify with that, or
yeah,
I know you had mentioned the Kabbalah and different things like that.
I mean, I consider myself a person that weaves together a lot of different philosophies, and Satanism is definitely one of them. And yeah, I consider myself a Satanist in the sense that I am, or some version of me, some higher version of me is a big part of what my higher power is. You know, and I think I discovered the occult at the same time as I discovered like a lot of music and stuff, because I was on these message boards online, and I remember kids at school, some kids had like the Satanic Bible, and I remember seeing copies of it and reading passages of it, and also doing like searches online and finding out about Satanism. And Aleister Crowley was a name that popped up early on for me. And, like I said, Marilyn Manson and the Antichrist Superstar album was a huge sort of a nod to satanic philosophy. And I got his book, Long Hard Road Out of Hell, and he talked about how Anton LaVey was like a mentor for him. And so I was interested in Anton LaVey, and I went on to kind of study some of these things to some extent, and they definitely played a role in my practice. And also just, later in life, studying Kabbalah. Kabbalah had a huge influence on me, and, as well as like witchcraft and just, books about witchcraft. And just the idea of manifesting your own identity, your own destiny, your own reality, because whatever you've grown up with is not cutting it. It's they want to try to take a square peg and put it in a round hole, as the saying goes. They want to try to force you to conform and be someone that you're not meant to be. And so, these occult figures or these rock stars, they kind of represented like a going against the grain. So yeah, it was all hand in hand for me, for sure.
So what I'm thinking right now is, like, I've noticed there's a lot of common themes with people in the cult and the Satanism and stuff like that. It's a rough upbringing when you identify with all that stuff. So like in the Satanic Bible, it says like Satanists are born, they're not made. Right. And I think that I kind of feel like that is in general, let's just say people in the cult world, they're kind of like born, they're not made. It's just something in us that, well, for me, I can only talk about my journey. It's like, I feel like as I progress in my journey, I'm realizing like that was always just who I was internally. And like these outer like artists and stuff like that were just kind of beacons of light to what I was trying to uncover in myself. Like it was always been there, was always, it wasn't something that was like created by the outside. Like it was something that was just there. And I was wanting to like connect, like figure that out. And I think as I get older and go on my own journeys, like I'm realizing like, okay, that's always been there. How about can you relate to that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said there were beacons of light. I think that's how I feel. David Bowie was the beacon. Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson. It was like a glimmer of something that was drawing power from its own darkness instead of being ashamed of its own darkness. Because so much of society is about being ashamed of your carnal side or being afraid of your power in a way. That's sort of what Christianity has kind of promoted, is the idea that we have to hide a part of ourselves that's shameful, when that part of ourselves is actually a great source of our power. And so these artists that were like, like David Bowie with all his gender bending makeup and his incredible expressionism of his different like personas, like whether it's Ziggy Stardust or the Thin White Duke or this or that. Bowie was like a beacon because he was so expressive. He wasn't afraid to show these sides of himself that were taboo. That was a beacon to me. I mean, as a kid, I agree. Like, I think witches are born. They're not made. Like, I was born a witch. I used to wear my mom's jewelry and stuff, and I pretend I have magical powers. And I always gravitated towards like, having this sort of androgynous appearance, and they tried to, my parents tried to like kind of push that down because they were like, what's going on? I used to walk around and like I'd be like, I have magical powers, and I would pretend like, all these, I was doing all this stuff. And yeah, I think intuitively, I felt like I was part of a movement that I didn't know existed, I guess, until later.
I think that's fascinating that you touched on that. It's because like I think I always feel like when you're young, you just have such innocent spirit, like such innocent. And I think even like, well, in the Bible, it talks about having faith and having the faith of a child, right? And I think even in the cult world, like part of working magic is having that innocence and that faith in your magic and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So and I find that interesting too, because like I remember when I was younger, like I always felt like, okay, I can think about something and create change and see that play out in reality. And I used to like and witness that, and then as you're getting older, it's kind of like the outside world's trying to tell you, or your parents and society's trying to tell you that's not how it is. But like you're looking around and you're like, okay, well, that's not really what's going on here, So I think you touched on that.
Yeah, there was a sense for me growing up that it was almost like they had everyone under some kind of spell, where everyone was doing these 9-to-5 jobs, and they were miserable, but they were hiding how miserable they were, and they were trying to just fit into some kind of slave system. And I was like, no, like I can imagine my way out of this. I can invent something that will allow me to transcend that and make a new lifestyle for myself. At a really early age, I remember thinking like, I don't want to be like those people. I want to make my own reality.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I totally relate to that. And yeah, I think children are unfiltered. Children are not are unconditioned, is what it is. It's because they're coming out raw, so they know instinct. They know that they can shape reality, and then we try to tell them, no. We teach them that word no. Children are all just yes. Children are just I want this, I want this, I want that, I want to do, and you know, and so they're existing. They're coming from I believe that they're reincarnating from a place where they were in a limitless place that was not the third dimension. They were
Mhm.
in a fifth dimension where they were limitless and free, and they were, in between lifetimes. In other words, like they died in their previous lifetime, and then they were in this space, and then they came back into the third dimension. And here in the third dimension, we have to teach people all about limits and rules and regulations because we're controlled by physical reality. And there's, a group of people who are the elite who are controlling everyone here and trying to get everyone to follow along with their rules. So the children are being conditioned, within schools to become a worker and work for this elite, basically. And these kids know better, and that's why they don't want to go to class. They want to, cut class and go, because instinctively they feel as though they're being conditioned into slavery. And we're telling them, no, if this is normal, you have to do this, and it's not
The
normal.
sky's not blue, it's green.
Right. It's we're kind of like gaslighting kids, I think, and into being okay with not being okay. So
Yeah.
I would, and then those of us who are on the left-hand path are kind of like the people who are like, no, I'm not going to be okay with not being okay. I'm going to make my own destiny.
Hmm. I like that. So back to so you came to California. So back to your sobriety thing. So what was your aha moment where you were like, okay, I'm done with this?
Well, my aha moment was I was hooking up with someone that I met online, and I knew I was done.
Yeah, brilliant.
I knew I was done because I kept getting into these fights. I would get drunk and I would like go and fight people, and it was people who it started to become people that didn't deserve it. I was lashing out onto weak people who didn't deserve my anger. Or I'd be on the subway and I'd be like talking shit to someone and hoping that they would fight me. And I became like a bully. I grew up being bullied and stuff. And, like I said, my friend kind of fought back, but I wasn't really that type. And then later I became a fighter and a brawler. And I think I was trying to make up for the fact that I felt like I didn't stand up for myself as a kid. And I started attacking people. And then I was attacking the wrong people that didn't deserve it. And I became the monster that I hated. I became the bully. And so I knew I was done drinking because I wasn't okay with my behavior anymore. I wasn't okay with who I became. So I was hooking up with somebody that I met online, and they had said, like, you should go to Israel. And I was like, something just went ding in my head, and I was like, Israel, yeah, I got to go to Israel. And I told my parents, and they're like, what the fuck? Because my dad was like, you don't care about Judaism. Like you never really, we had no connection whatsoever to Israel. Even him, like he's a Jew, but he's a New York Jew. He doesn't get into all that religious stuff. But I just had this feeling that if I go to Israel, I'll have some kind of like breakthrough. And so I would manage to get on this thing called Birthright, which is if you have a parent that's Jewish, you can go for free to Israel. And I went there, and it changed my life. It blew my mind. I went to the Wailing Wall, which is the last remaining wall of the original temple of the Jews in Old Jerusalem, and which is like an incredible place. I mean, you just go there, and it's like time stands still. It's you're like walking on ancient cobblestones, and I went there as a Satanist, as a person I'm not into like Abrahamic religion per se, but still there's a power, there's an energy that's undeniable, and so I felt that wall. When I went to that wall, it was just like pulsing with energy, and I touched the wall. I was hungover as shit, by the way, because I had gotten wasted the night before, and I even drank Listerine because I was so desperate to keep drinking because we ran out of beer, and I tried to steal beer from a gas station in Israel, and then I almost got arrested. And then, so I was drinking Listerine, And then so the next day I was all kinds of like fucked up, and I was hungover, and I went and I touched the wall, and I just started crying, and I saw a vision, a holy vision of eyes swirling like a kaleidoscope, and flames, and I saw eyes and flames swirling like this, and then I heard screams, like screaming, like it was like a vision of hell, I guess. Or the way I interpreted it was a vision of my future if I continue to drink. And I clicked for me, like there's some power here that's something outside of myself that I don't understand. And it's speaking to me right now. And I got chills, and I never experienced anything like that. And then, on the plane on the way back home, of course, I was drinking alcohol again. And then I heard this voice next to me, and it said, "You don't have to do this anymore." And that was the beginning of my actual sobriety. I started going to AA meetings, and they say you can have a higher power of your own understanding. So I was able to form a higher power that is not Jesus. It's not, some biblical thing. It's my own thing, which is weaving together aspects of Kabbalah, which is something I started learning about later. Witchcraft, Satanism, and just the universe, like this, kind of a hippie-ish, I guess, idea about the universe. And I started studying like simulation theory and all these other things later, which kind of changed my view on things again. But really, I got sober from AA and doing the 12 steps in AA. And, I wasn't perfect by any means. I mean, I continued my sex addiction, which really started before my alcoholism, continued full blast. And I was really shitty to a lot of, I hurt a lot of people because now I was sober, but I was still just looking to get laid all the time and saying whatever I have to say to be in these relationships with women so that they would feel comfortable sleeping with me. And then, I'm on to the next one. Or I'm cheating with multiple ones or what have you. And also going on tour, the music stuff started picking up because I got sober. So I was more clear-headed and I could actually focus. And then I started being able to tour and stuff. And then it was just like, it was basically like, okay, can I meet a girl and then be fucking her in my van within 1 hour? And the answer is yes. I could, and I did many times. And it was hurtful to other people who, because I would have a girlfriend back home and then I'd be like, oh, I'm on tour or whatever. And I started recognizing that and also just being addicted to porn and stuff. I was just hopelessly addicted to sex, basically. And I didn't know it. I didn't know that could even be an addiction. So I started going to meetings that deal with sex and love addiction. And that kind of has culminated in me being able to show up for relationships, whether it's, I was in a brief poly relationship. By the way, I'm not preaching monogamy. I'm just talking about honesty. So if you're in a poly situation, there's some kind of agreement. Like, I'm going to tell you if I sleep with somebody, or I'm going to, or maybe not. But, in my case, I was in monogamous relationships and I was cheating. So, and then, now I'm in a situation where I was able to show up in my past 2 relationships and not cheat on them for 2 years each. And then, I was in a poly relationship where I was able to kind of show up with that relationship and try that out a little bit. And now I have a girlfriend that I really, really, really have deep feelings for, and I've been able to show up for this relationship in a way that I've never shown up. I used to be the person that was avoidant. They say there's anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, and secure attachment. And I was the avoidant. So I would make the girl feel jealous, feel like she's not enough, and like psychologically torture her, and then like basically let her know that I had other people interested in me and stuff. I'm not like that now. I'm very secure in my relationship, and I know that she feels the same way, and that's because of the work that I've done. And, you know, Satanism to me is also about you're acting in a way that you would want to be treated. And, you know, so this is how I want to be treated. I don't want to be lied to. I don't want to be manipulated by someone or have someone make me feel like I'm not good enough. So that's what I'm giving in relationships now. So, you know, in a way, it's all come full circle where I'm able to be on the left-hand path in a way that is also aligned with being a person that's sober and being someone that's has my own sense of what I feel is virtuous.
Yeah. And that's one of the big reasons I was excited to have you on the show, is because I think especially for like the relevant generations, and I hear so often that people like they just they can't find comfort in religion, you know, and especially when coming to the rooms and trying to find a higher power. So I think it's an awesome example that you're able to find an alternative higher power, and that you have the proof in the pudding. You know, you're clean and sober, you're living a healthy life, and you know there's layers to it. Once you have like the sobriety in check and balanced out, then you got these other layers that come out. You know, for you is sex addiction, you know, and I've had that same thing happen to me where it's like now there's other layers to it, you know. But I'm grateful that I'm sober to be able to get to deal with those and uncover more and becoming a better person, to be better in relationships and a better person to just other people in general, you know? Yeah. So I think that's really awesome. And I think that's awesome too, you know, like your different types of relationships. I feel like that's very relevant. A lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, I think like there's a misconception about Satanism and that the idea that we don't value healthy relationships, or that it's all about me, and I'm going to treat everyone else. And that's not what he's saying. You know, he's saying treat them how you would want to be treated. And then if someone treats you like shit, then get them back tenfold. But you know, I do think it's important to be the person you would want to be with, or be friends with, or be a relationship with, or have it, whatever, you know, you want to walk out there in the world and give people the best version of you. And it doesn't have to be the version they're talking about in Christianity. You know, if I want to get pegged, or if I want to have oral sex in public, or if I want to, you know, do things that are sexually, carnally exciting, that's very much part of sobriety. If I want to, you know, fuck my girlfriend's face or whatever, but like I'm gonna do it in a way that's like respectful at the same time, you know. So you can be edgy, you can be authentically you, and you can also be like an adult about it, you know.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think it's really awesome because not only are you're a musician and you're a singer and you have a rock band, but also like you're busy in the sobriety field, right? You work at a rehab.
Yeah, I work at a rehab, and I do, like, I have a lot of conversations with the clients there, like, you know, listen, this is a higher power for you, because they come in with a religious views. Like, there's clients that come in and they were like one client is, you know, she's she's a trans male, so she's transitioning to be male, and she's, you know, she's LGBTQ. Basically. So, you know, she's still young, so she's still figuring it all out. But she was bullied by her family of origin and abused for her sexuality and her appearance, and basically, you know, became homeless and was then on meth, and, you know, had situations with going to prison and all these things. And this person is like totally turning their life around. And I'm telling them, like, look, we're going to find you a higher power that works for you. You know, and there was another guy that I sponsored, and you know, he said, you know, he's a Satanist, and he said my higher power is myself, and I said it can be a higher version of you, as long as it's not you, like the same, you know, the day-to-day version of you that wants to drink. that version probably shouldn't be your higher power. But the version of you that's better than, that's to me, that's what Lucifer is. It's like the light bringer. It's like the empowered version of ourselves. So if my higher power is a higher version of me that I can access, that version will help me stay sober. And that's what I told him. I said, your higher power can be you. It's just a higher version. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And one of the things I love too is that I'm sure you heard this too, is like our higher power changes, and I like how you said it, Lucifer, the light bringer. I feel like that light, that source, I feel like all religions and most belief systems have that common theme of a light that goes through nature. That's the source of life and light.
Right.
And I feel like I can get that connection through having a conversation with somebody, through being out in nature. Like it's always changing, or going to a meeting, or just different things. Like it's always changing how that energy just comes through.
Yeah, it's exactly, it's the light. And even Jesus, originally he said, I am of God. And then these Christians have misinterpreted that to say, oh, I am God. I don't believe that he was saying, I am God. I think he was saying, I am of God. And in other words, we are all of God. We are all our own God. We're all our own gods. And we can be our own gods. But we have to rise to the occasion. We have to be a better us. We can't just be like, indulging in everything that we want to indulge in, even if it's harmful. Like, I think that with Anton LaVey, what he was saying was like, indulgence is good, but you have to have discernment. And I think that's what's lacking from people. A lot of people nowadays on either side of the coin is like, you have to have discernment. Like, am I going towards my goals, or am I just wallowing in some kind of self-destruction?
It's true. So there was a story you were telling me about, like a situation where you kind of had an issue with, I think, someplace you performed when you were like having your drinking, and then you went back in sobriety and mended that relationship, and an opportunity opened up to that. I wanted you to discuss that. I thought that was a really powerful story.
Yeah. So in AA, we do the amends, and we try to make our harms right. And, obviously my amends, some of them haven't been possible, because if someone has you blocked, that means they don't want to be contacted. But in this case, I was banned from a club starting back in like 2015 or 2016. We were playing there, and we got banned because I was arrogant, and I was like yelling at the person that does the sound in front of the whole audience, and demanding that they do something. And basically, we were banned from the club, and for years. And I after I moved here, I was like, fuck, this sucks, because I want to play at this club. It's so, it'd be so perfect to be playing here. And it's a big goth club in Hollywood. And so I went back there, and I said, hey, can I talk to the manager? And the door person was like, oh, I know exactly who you are. And I was like, really? And it was years later, and she's like, yeah, you're Justin Symbol, and you're banned, and all this stuff. And I was like, well, can I talk to you about that? Because, listen, like when that happened, I was actually newly sober, but I was very chaotic at that time. I was very arrogant. I was feeling a lot of emotions that I wasn't used to. So I said, look, when that happened, I had just gotten sober. I was really, lost, and I was just like not really fully aware of my actions. And I said, I want to make amends to you. Like I said, I'm in a program of recovery, and we do amends here. So I wanted to just tell you, like, I deeply apologize for my actions, and I'll fucking come here and scrub your toilet. I'll come clean whatever I have to do to make this right. And the woman, she said, you know what, let me just talk to the manager, and you can like send us an email and say whatever you want. So I did a formal amends in the email, and then I was unbanned, and we just played there in July, and it was like a big crowd, and it was a great show. We did really well with our merch and stuff. And yeah, so that's just the power of, sobriety is you can, show up as a different version of you. That's, you can be accountable for what you did. And also, you can also tell people like, look, I'm not that anymore. So please give me another chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's incredible. You're doing a lot of really incredible things. And how is it being clean and sober in the music business? Because I know that probably comes along being around a lot of partying and stuff.
Yeah, it can be hard. I mean, it was hard. The hardest for me was having band members that were alcoholic, or I don't want to say that they were alcoholic because that's not my business. But let's say that they were drinking excessively, and I was having to babysit them, or like worrying about like other people's behavior, or just staying out too late when you're out on tour, and then now the bag of cocaine's going around, and everyone's getting a little sloppy, and people are starting to just do that drunk talk thing. That could be the most annoying thing in sobriety. But the good thing is like I have a sponsor I can call. I have sober friends, and now the band I have here in LA, nobody really has those substance abuse issues. Like I'm used to having band members that are like getting wasted, and it's really not the case now.
Yeah. I think in the room, I was like, there's a saying that we don't get sober to be boring. We're not a glum lot.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get sober to be boring. That was one of the main things that kept me out there doing drugs, because I thought if I get sober, I'm gonna like lose my edge or whatever. I didn't get sober to be boring. I mean, I'm doing all my dreams. That's what I tell the people in the rehab. I'm like, look, I might be going on tour in a month, so you're lucky I'm even here working with you guys, and I'm just doing this to show you that like sobriety doesn't have to look like you're gonna just like be this boring person that just sits in meetings all day and you have no life. I was like, I go to BDSM sex clubs and I'm out until fucking 4 or 6, even 6 in the morning sometimes. Are surrounded by all kind of hedonistic activities, and I like that shit. To me, it's cool. And then you know what? If I start feeling uncomfortable or I don't want to be there, I'm gonna leave. And my partner that I'm with now is someone that respects that, and like she's on board with me. I've dated people that were selfish and wanted to keep partying and doing coke even when I was ready to go. And that was a relationship that had to end, because it's like I got to keep my sobriety first. And like if I'm getting triggered because it's 5 a.m. and there's coke going around and there's nothing. Mainly, it's if I'm bored and there's nothing. Yeah. There's no other reason to be there. The party's not even fun anymore. It's like only like a few. Let's say there's like 30 people left and they're all just like on drugs. That's where it's like, all right, like why are we still here? This is stupid. And then if the person won't leave with me, then that person's got to go, because like that's that point there, and they're high, because that particular individual, she would get high and then like force me to stay out until the end of the night, and I'm like, yo, like I don't feel respected right now,
Yeah. Well, I think you're a perfect example of that. That we don't get sober to be boring.
Yeah.
I think that could be a major deterrent for a lot of people. Are like, well, why am I getting sober? It sounds boring.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been boring. It's been more exciting than getting fucked up. Getting fucked up is boring because it's predictable. It's like, oh, here we go, another bender. I mean, wild things definitely happen for sure, but there's a predictable pattern of like, okay, now that I'm drinking, I'm going to drink more, and then this is going to happen. It's like it becomes a cycle. So being sober, you can do things like I went to Colombia and I recorded an album during the pandemic, and I was in the fucking jungle in Colombia, and like that's all because of sobriety. Like I wouldn't have had the money to do that. I wouldn't have had the fucking balls to do that. I wouldn't have had the organization to pull that off. I've toured around. I've toured Canada. I've toured all over the United States. I hope to be touring in Europe soon. I've gotten to work with a lot of my idols in music, like Daisy Berkowitz from Marilyn Manson, DJ Swamp. We actually are talking to Jay Gordon from Orgy right now about doing something with him. So, and this is the first place I've mentioned that. But, like these things are happening because I'm sober and I'm not this like drunken asshole in the club that's, causing a scene or whatever. No one wants to work with that shit. It's annoying.
So do you have a ritual you can share with our audience that you use for your artistic or like a daily ritual or routine that you apply?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like what I try to do is like I try to wake up and I try to there's a yoga routine that I try to do in the morning, and it's like just a great wake up routine, and it gets my body moving. I'm all about physical exercise. To me, that's huge component of my sobriety. So I do this yoga stuff. I go to work. You know, I write out my gratitude because a lot of times I'll be in my head like, why do I have to do this? I should be. My head's full of a lot of things of stories of how I should be here or whatever. And it's fine. I'm gonna get there. But like the way I do it, my head likes to try to shame me because shame is a good way to get high. So
Mhm.
I counteract that with gratitude list, things I'm grateful for that I've achieved in my life. I have to acknowledge all the blessings that I've worked for and that things I've accomplished. Just to take so that I can like, you know, basically like acknowledge that actually I have a really good life. And then from there I can say, oh, I want it to be even better. So what are my goals? You know, and as far as like magic goes, I do a lot of candle magic. That's the main magic that I like. I also have done sigil. Um, and I just find it like it's good to like visualize your goal and actually do some kind of like magical practice towards that goal. You know, sex magic is another thing I'm not a huge fan of, especially not when it's just masturbating. But I am a fan of it if you're having sex with a partner that you have a very strong emotional connection with, and if you set a mutual goal with that partner. I think that sex magic in the like when you're basically where you're visualizing what you want at the moment of
Mhm.
orgasm, that could be really amazing. Like, and that's something I want to try in my relationship.
Yeah. Um, so we'll end with this. Um, so do you have a message to our audience for anyone out there that is struggling with self-doubt or like addiction?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my message is that we've all struggled with self doubt. Anyone that's great that you see that out there doing exactly what you want has at one point they weren't great and they weren't doing what they wanted, and they overcame those doubts to become the person they are. And so it's really about overcoming whatever trauma, whatever bad experiences you've experienced in your life. It's about overcoming that and just believing that something greater is possible, and just basically proving all the haters wrong. And the bigger you get, the more haters there's going to be, but there's also going to be people cheering you on because people are going to start to see your vision. They're going to start to co-sign your vision. So just keep your vision first and foremost in your mind. And you have to be honest with yourself if you're getting in your own way and self-sabotaging with getting fucked up all the time or wasting money on drugs or you know, like losing hours and hours of your time on this shit, or you're, you know, having health consequences from your drug use and stuff. You know, that you have to realize that your drug use is not the source of your creativity. Your creativity existed before you ever did drugs, and it will exist even more when you stop doing drugs. You just got to learn how to like flow with the world in a new way, and it's more powerful though. I mean, Bowie got sober, Trent Reznor got sober, Marilyn Manson's sober now. He's a good friend of mine, and he's been sober for 3 years now. I'm fucking sober. You know, a lot of people are doing this shit, and we're out here doing cool shit. So just be true to yourself.
I feel like sobriety is being more trendier.
Yeah, and then you know what? I was on this. I was doing this out of pure desperation because I didn't want to. Either I was on the road to either die, kill somebody, and end up in prison. I'm just being
Mhm.
real with you because I was a murderous motherfucker when I was young, and you know I have a dark side that came out bad. And you know, we live in a country with laws and shit. And I'm like, if I commit a murder, I'm gonna be in prison. I'm too pretty to go to fucking prison. So, but for me, it was about self-preservation. It wasn't about a fucking trend. But you know what? I'm glad it's a trend because you know getting drunk and all those stupid movies like American Pie and the fucking Old School or whatever. All those drinking frat boy movies. Those were a trend, and it got everybody to be a fucking alcoholic. So you know what? If sobriety is going to be a trend, then all all for the better.
Good thing. It's good for our future generations.
Yeah, it's good. Let it be a trend.
Where can people find you?
It's on Instagram at the God Bombs, Spotify, the God Bombs.
You have a website.
What?
The website? You have a website too, right?
Yeah, thegodbombs.com. Basically, just search the God Bombs on whatever platform you want.
And you guys have really cool t-shirts. With the t-shirts, who is that girl's name? Taylor Swift. Yeah, Taylor Swift. I had a brain fart. So yeah, I'll put all that stuff, all the links in the bottom so people can check you out and find your new music video, Lord of the Flies. Check it out on YouTube. Put the link below. And yeah, thank you, Justin, for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on and sharing your message. All right. Oh, hell, Satan.
Hell, Satan.